Before you came into my life, everything was black and white. Now all I see is color, like a rainbow in the sky. So tell me your love will never fade, that I won't see no clouds of gray. Cause I don't want another. You bring color to my life, baby. Life was so heavy, I was giving up, no. But since you came along, I'm light as a feather. You give me something incredible, sensational, baby. When we're together, everything is better. My darling, only you can brighten up my day. You make everything change, you rearrange, so don't go away. Let me tell ya, before you came into my life, everything was black and white. Now all I see is color, like a rainbow in the sky. So tell me your love will never fade, but I won't see no clouds of gray. Cause I don't want another. You bring color to my life, baby. Now all I see is color. You bring color to my life, baby. Now all I see is color. You bring color to my life, baby.
I never thought that I would meet anybody who knows my body, how you know my body. I can't deny it, see I stick around, cause we paint the town any way that we want it, like red and yellow and pink and green. That's what I see when you're here with me. Everything is brighter cause the limit is the sky. Baby, that's the way you make me feel. You know that only you can brighten up my day, yeah.
You chase all those gray clouds away. You chase the clouds away.
It helps me find a brand new shade of me.
You make everything change. You rearrange, so don't ever fade. Don't fade, don't fade, don't fade.
You bring the color.
You bring the color.
Yeah, you bring the color.
Before you came into my life, everything was black and white. Now all I see is color, like a rainbow in the sky. So tell me your love will never fade, I won't see no clouds of gray. Cause I don't want another. You bring color to my life, baby. Before you came into my life, everything was black and white. Now all I see is color, like a rainbow in the sky. So
Tell me.
now all I see is color to my life.
Red and yellow and pink and green.
That's what I see when you're with me. You bring the color.
You bring the color.
You bring the color. Now all I see is color. You bring color to my life, baby.
Kisses all it takes, falling in love with me. Possibilities, I look like all you need. Let me take the night, I love real easy. And I know that you still wanna see me. On the Sunday morning, music real loud. Let me love you while the moon is still out. Something in you lit up heaven in me. The feeling won't let me sleep. Cause I'm lost in the way you move, the way you feel. One kiss is all it takes, falling in love with me. Possibilities, I look like all you need. One kiss is all it takes, falling in love with me. Possibilities, I look like all you need. I just wanna feel your skin on mine. Feel your eyes do the exploring. Passion in the message when you smile. Take my time. Something in you lit up heaven in me. The need your company tonight. Something in you lit up heaven in me. The feeling won't let me sleep, 'cause I'm lost in the way you move, the way you feel. One kiss is all it takes, falling in love with me. Possibilities, I look like all you need. One kiss is all it takes, falling in love with me. Possibilities, I look like all you need.
Just a young gun with a quick fuse. I was uptight, wanna let loose. I was dreaming of bigger things and wanna leave my old life behind. Not a yes sir, not a follower. Fit the box, fit the mold, have a seat in the foyer. Take a number. I was lightning before the thunder.
Thunder, 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 thunder,
Thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, thunder. Thunder. Kids were laughing in my classes while I was scheming for the masses. Who do you think you are? Dreaming about being a big star. They say you're basic, they say you're easy. You're always riding in the backseat. Now I'm smiling from the stage while you were clapping in the nosebleeds.
thunder, 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 thunder,
Thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder. Thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder.
Do you recall, not long ago, when you would walk on the sidewalk? Innocent, remember, all we did was care for each other. But the night was warm, we were bold and young. All around, the wind blows, we would only hold on to let go. Blood kiss, fire gun, we need someone to lean on. Blood kiss, fire gun, all we need is somebody to lean on. Blood kiss, fire gun, we need someone to lean on. Blood kiss, fire gun, all we need is somebody to lean on.
Can't lie, I could picture being with you till you take my last breath away. I'll be there when you wake in the morning, late. Too much, is it just enough for you? getting late. Would you like to stay? Nah, 'cause I'm bad at reading signs, but I wanna do whatever you wanna do. If you wanted to, girl, we could cross that line. No, we've been friends and I've only knows broken hands. Yeah, that's what you said, but girl, let me change your mind. These feelings are hard to find. Feelings are hard, but I feel them in my chest. Tiny war within, but when I pull you closer, girl, I can't explain, but I wanna do whatever you wanna do. If you wanted to, girl, we could cross that line. No, we've been friends and I've only knows broken hands. Yeah, that's what you said, but girl, let me change your mind. These feelings are hard to find. Feelings are hard, yeah. And I know that it hurts sometimes, that it hurts sometimes when I'm with you. And I know that it hurts sometimes, that it hurts sometimes when I miss you. And I know that it's on your mind, that it's on your mind when I kiss you. But I wanna do whatever you wanna do. I wanna do whatever you wanna do. If you wanted to, girl, we could cross that line. No, we've been friends and I've only knows broken hands. Yeah, that's what you said, but girl, let me change your mind. These feelings are hard to find. Feelings are hard to find. Yeah.
Baby, I'm falling, losing my focus. How come you're acting like you haven't noticed? I'm going crazy, stuck with your maybe. Left me in nowhere, my beautiful nightmare. Oh my love, when I look into your eyes, girl, it gets me every time. And I thought that you should know that I got you on my mind, on my mind, on my mind. I want you all the time, every night. Tell me you feel it too, you don't have to play it cool. 'Cause I got you on my mind, on my mind, on my mind. Cool as a cold war, hot like a fever. I'm trying to hold on, 'cause baby, I need you. You're so contagious, tell me I'll make it. Act like you don't know, I'm caught in your limbo. My love, when I look into your eyes, girl, it gets me every time. And I thought that you should know that I got you on my mind, on my mind, on my mind. I want you all the time, every night. Tell me you feel it too, you don't have to play it cool. 'Cause I got you on my mind, on my mind, on my mind. Come on, baby, get closer. I wanna hold you, think of you all the time. I'm counting the days that I have to wait for you to make up your mind. Oh, my love, when I look into your eyes, girl, it gets me every time. And I thought that you should know that I got you on my mind. Small talk, no conversation. That look makes me impatient. I can't tell what you're thinking. Please tell me what you're thinking. Last night we were more than fine. Just tell me if you changed your mind. If you changed your mind. Cause I'm all in. I'm calling, no answer. But you text me when you feel like, when it feels right to you. But I'm all in. I'm falling faster. But if you're looking at me with the heart of doubt, don't kiss me right now. Don't tell me that you need me. Don't show up at my house all caught up in your feelings. Don't run me round and round. Don't build me up just to let me down. Just to let me down, down, down. Hey, don't mess with my head. Don't tell me you're falling with your feet still on the ledge. I'm all out of breath. Baby, don't run me round and round. Don't kiss me, no, don't kiss me right now. On your lips, just leave it if you don't mean it. Yeah. You know you got me in the palm of your hand, but I love those hands. Yeah. But you only let me hold you when he can. Yeah, I don't understand. Cause I'm all in. I'm calling, no answer. But you text me when you feel like, when it feels right to you. But I'm all in. I'm falling faster. But if you're looking at me with a heart of doubt, don't kiss me right now. Don't tell me that you need me. Don't show up at my house all caught up in your feelings. Don't run me round and round. Don't build me up just to let me down. Just to let me down, down, down. Hey, don't mess with my head. Don't tell me you're falling with your feet still on the ledge. I'm all out of breath. Baby, don't run me round and round. Don't kiss me, no, don't kiss me right now. On your lips, just leave it if you don't mean it. Hurry home, let's never leave the house. But you don't mean it. You're saying that our friends go out, but you don't mean it. Why you let those words come out of your mouth if you don't mean it? You've been staring at me with the heart of doubt. Don't kiss me right now. Don't tell me that you need me. Don't show up at my house all caught up in your feelings. Don't run me round and round. Don't build me up just to let me down. Just to let me down, down, down. Don't mess with my head. Don't tell me you're falling with your feet still on the ledge. I'm all out of breath. Baby, don't run me round and round. Don't kiss me, no, don't kiss me right now. On your lips, just leave it if you don't mean it. Ain't never felt this way. Can't get enough, so stay with me. It's not like we got big plans. Let's drive around town holding hands. And I need to know you're the only one. Alright, alright. And I need to know that you keep me up all night, yeah.
summer nights. Hard disco balls, my kitchen light. And you need to know that nobody can take your place. Your place. And you need to know that I'm hella obsessed with your face. Your face, yeah. Oh, my heart hurts so good. How I love you, yeah. So bad, so bad. Oh, yeah. Oh, my heart hurts so good. How I love you, yeah. So bad, so bad.
Give me your all and
you be my friend? Can you be my lover up until the very end? Let me show you love. I don't pretend. Stick by my side even when the world is giving in. Oh, don't you worry. I'll be there whenever you want me. I need somebody who can love me at my worst. No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my worth. 'Cause it's only you, nobody knew I put you first. And for you, girl, I swear I do the worst. If you stay forever, let me hold your hand. I can feel those places in your heart no one else can. Let me show you love. I don't pretend. I'll be right here, baby. You know it's sink or swim. Oh, don't you worry. I'll be there whenever you want me. I need somebody who can love me at my worst. No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my worth. 'Cause it's only you, nobody knew I put you first. And for you, girl, I swear I do the worst. I need somebody who can love me at my worst. No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my worth. 'Cause it's only you, nobody knew I put you first. And for you, girl, I swear I do the worst.
Baby, you fine. I see the way you carry yourself.
Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi, Widya.
Selamat
Assalamualaikum.
pagi. Ya, terima kasih. Saya ucapkan selamat datang. Di sini sudah ada Pak Hari. Selamat pagi, Bapak.
Selamat pagi.
Iya, terus di sini juga sudah ada Pak Nazif. Selamat pagi, Pak.
Pagi,
Sudah.
Widya, Pak Hari.
Selamat pagi juga
Selamat pagi.
kepada Pak Muri Kuswari. Okay. And here also Mr. James McKenzie from Canada. Hello, Mr. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. How are you, Mr.?
I'm very well, thank you. It's not quite morning here yet, though. It's 9 p.m. on Friday night here in Canada.
Oh, it's very morning here. Di sini. Okay, thank you, Mr. Pagi ini juga sudah ada beberapa peserta yang sepertinya sudah bergabung. Selamat pagi untuk para peserta yang saat ini sudah mulai bergabung di room Zoom. Kita akan mulai acaranya sebentar lagi sekitar pukul 8 pagi ya.
are who you are. 'Cause time seems like it'd be right with someone like you by my side. And my heart's been hurt one too many damn times, but with you I'm down to give it a try. Baby, what's poppin', how you is? Hope I'm not much of a nuisance. I was just wondering if you're down to try this. Fresh on our east side, oh where you drop this. Oh, it's my jaw, dripping with sauce. Don't have a flaw, just go ahead and floss. But words are meant lost when I'm around you. Just saw you posted, girl, what should I do? If I hit your DMs, would you be down to go out? Maybe grab some food and we could talk about what's your favorite color. What made you be who you are, who you are. 'Cause time seems like it'd be right with someone like you by my side. And my heart's been hurt one too many damn times, but with you I'm down to give it a try. 'Cause time seems like it'd be right with someone like you by my side. And my heart's been hurt one too many damn times, but with you I'm down to give it a try. 'Cause time seems like it'd be right with someone like you by my side. Do you love the rain? Does it make you dance when you're drunk with your friends at a party? What's your favorite song? Does it make you smile? Do you think of me? When you close your eyes, tell me, what are you dreaming? Everything I wanna know it all. I'd spend 10,000 hours and 10,000 more. Oh, if that's what it takes to learn that sweetheart of yours. And I might never get there, but I'm gonna try. If it's 10,000 hours or the rest of my life, I'm gonna love you. Do you miss the road that you grew up on? Did you get your middle name from your grandma? When you think about you forever now, do you think of me? When you close your eyes, tell me, what are you dreaming? Everything I wanna know it all. I'd spend 10,000 hours and 10,000 more. Oh, if that's what it takes to learn that sweetheart of yours. And I might never get there, but I'm gonna try. If it's 10,000 hours or the rest of my life, I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna love you. Oh, want the good and the bad, everything in between. Oh, gotta cure my curiosity. Oh yeah, I'd spend 10,000 hours and 10,000 more. Oh, if that's what it takes to learn that sweetheart of yours. And I might never get there, but I'm gonna try. If it's 10,000 hours or the rest of my life, I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna love you. Yeah. And I'm You don't know, babe, when you hold me and kiss me slowly, it's a
you are. You're the coffee that I need in the morning. You're my sunshine in the rain when it's pouring. Won't you give yourself to me? Give it all. I just wanna see. I just wanna see how beautiful you are. You know that I see it. I know you're a star. Where you go, I'll follow, no matter how far. If life is a movie, oh, you're the best part. Oh, you're the best part. Oh, best part.
It's the sunrise and those brown eyes, yes. You're the one that I desire. When we wake up and then we make love, it makes me feel so nice. You're my water when I'm stuck in the desert. You're the Tylenol I take when my head hurts. You're the sunshine of my life. I just wanna see how beautiful you are. You know that I see it. I know you're a star. Where you go, I'll follow, no matter how far. If life is a movie, then you're the best part. Oh, you're the best part. Oh, best part. If you love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? Won't you? If you love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? Love me, won't you? If you love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? If you love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? Love me, won't you? If you love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? If you love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you?
Oke, baik. Selamat pagi. Karena waktu sudah menunjukkan pukul 8, kita akan segera buka acaranya. Baik, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Yang terhormat Bapak Hari Friedrich LM SGZ MSc RD selaku founder Gizi Gama. Yang terhormat Bapak Muri Kuswari SPD MSc selaku founder Gizi Kebugaran. Saya ucapkan juga selamat datang kepada perwakilan dari Indofood. Terima kasih telah bergabung dan mendukung acara SymposiFest Gizi dan Kebugaran 2021. Semoga acara ini dapat memberikan manfaat khususnya bagi peserta dan seluruh yang terlibat dalam acara ini. Telah hadir juga narasumber pada hari ini yang terhormat Mr. James McKendy PhD, Bapak Aderai, Bapak Nazif Gifari pada pagi hari ini. Kemudian juga yang terhormat kepada coach yang telah hadir, ada Coach Sistia, Coach Tito, dan Coach Eva. Yang terhormat kepada moderator, Mbak Fadila Iswideandra SGZ, dan Mbak Melisa Stefani Kadito SGZ. Yang terhormat para presentator pada hari ini, serta yang terhormat Bapak Ibu peserta SymposiFest Gizi dan Kebugaran 2021 yang berbahagia. Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin, puji dan syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, karena berkat rahmat-Nya kita diberikan kesempatan berkumpul secara virtual dalam keadaan sehat dalam acara SymposiFest ini. Selama 2 hari ke depan, kita akan mengikuti serangkaian acara SymposiFest 2021, The Next in Fitness and Nutrition. Oke, SymposiFest ini merupakan simposium pertama yang mengangkat unsur kebugaran dan kombinasi dengan olahraga yang diadakan oleh perusahaan startup, yaitu Gizi Kebugaran dan Gizi Gama. Jadi dalam kegiatan hari ini kita tidak hanya akan menerima materi dan diskusi, tapi juga akan melakukan exercise bersama. Jadi diharapkan untuk para peserta jangan lupa untuk bisa disiapkan air minum dan mungkin handuknya untuk nanti persiapan kita exercise. Nah, sebelumnya saya belum memperkenalkan diri, kan tidak afdol ya rasanya kalau tidak kenal dengan siapa nih yang membawakan acara pada pagi hari ini. Sebelumnya, perkenalkan, nama saya Widya Ahadianti, saya akan membantu berlangsungnya acara SymposiFest selama 2 hari ini. Oke, sekarang saya akan membacakan dulu susunan acara untuk SymposiFest hari pertama. Yang pertama, kita akan menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya, dilanjutkan dengan sambutan, lalu akan ada sesi 1 yang merupakan simposia. Sesi 1 ini akan membahas terkait gizi dan kebugaran beserta prospek bisnis di bidang tersebut, yang juga akan dilanjutkan dengan diskusi panel dan exercise. Kemudian masuk sesi 2, yaitu sharing experience. Pada sesi ini akan ada pemaparan materi lagi, oral presentasi, workshop, dan tentunya akan ada exercise lagi. Oke, kita mulai masuk agenda yang pertama, yaitu menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya. Baik, selanjutnya kita akan masuk ke sesi selanjutnya, yaitu sambutan dari Bapak Harif PT selaku founder Gizi Gama. Kepada yang terhormat dipersilahkan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, Bapak dan Ibu. Selamat datang di acara SymposiFest Gizi Kebugaran 2021. Saya Hari mengucapkan terima kasih banyak atas partisipasinya. Jadi acara ini memang ditujukan untuk mengkolaborasikan unsur akademisi dan unsur praktisi di bidang gizi kebugaran, dan harapannya Bapak dan Ibu bisa menikmati acara ini dari hari ini sampai besok sore. I also would like to welcome James. Thank you for participating in this event today. And today we have 2 speakers from abroad. So one James from McMaster University, Canada. Good afternoon or good evening there.
Good evening. Yeah, it's 9 p.m. On Friday night here in Canada, so we're a little bit behind you there.
Yeah, thank you again. And we're also going to have another speaker, Dr. Fiona Malcolmson from Newcastle University, later in the afternoon. So this event is hopefully can bring people from the industry and as well as from the academia to join and talk about what's the new trend and what's going to do with possibilities working in nutrition and fitness industry. So thank you very much, James. Buat Bapak dan Ibu, terima kasih sekali lagi atas partisipasinya. Selamat menikmati acara ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Pak Hari atas sambutannya. Nah, sekarang kita akan segera masuk ke sesi 1. Nah, sebelumnya mari kita kenalan dulu nih sama moderator yang akan memandu berjalannya diskusi selama sesi 1. Ada Mbak Fadila Iswideandra SGZ. Selamat pagi Mbak Deandra.
Selamat pagi Mbak Widya.
Ya, Mbak Deandra ini merupakan lulusan S1 Gizi Universitas Brawijaya dan juga merupakan salah satu ahli gizi di Gizi Kebugaran Indonesia. Oke, pasti di sini seluruh peserta, Bapak Ibu sudah tidak sabar ya akan mendengarkan materi dari pembicara kita yang luar biasa pada pagi hari ini. Tanpa berlama lagi, saya serahkan kepada moderator kita, Mbak Deanda. Kepada Mbak Deanda, dipersilahkan.
Oke, terima kasih Mbak Widya atas perkenalannya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, good morning, and good evening, I guess, to everyone, semua peserta di SymposiFest Gizi dan Kebugaran Indonesia Day 1. Oke, saya adalah Deandra, seorang ahli gizi di Gizi Kebugaran yang akan menjadi moderator untuk sesi pertama hari ini. Nah, jangan lupa untuk semuanya terus stay tune dan juga untuk menyiapkan baju olahraganya nih, karena nanti di tengah acara kita akan mengadakan exercise. Tapi sebelum itu kita dengarkan dulu materi-materi yang akan dibawakan oleh pembicara nasional dan maupun internasional. Untuk sesi pertama ini kita kedatangan tamu dari luar, jadi untuk presentasi akan dilakukan dalam bahasa Inggris. Tetapi apabila ada pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang ingin disampaikan dalam bahasa Indonesia, tidak masalah, kami akan mencoba sebaik mungkin untuk mentranslate pertanyaan tersebut. Okay, without further ado, now let me introduce our first speaker. He has a PhD in exercise as medicine from the University of Birmingham, UK. And his interest is novel nutritional interventions to augment muscle hypertrophy and mitigate losses in response to resistant exercise and aging. And his subject today is very, very interesting, and I guess it's his professionality. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. James McHenry, PhD from McMaster University. Hello, good evening, sir.
Good morning to you. Good evening from Canada. Thank you very much for having me. It's really good of you, and particularly Murray Kaswari for inviting me to the talk. So yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Okay, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Oh, are things great in Canada right now during the coronavirus?
It's not so bad here at the moment. Most people are double vaccinated, and it's just about to get cold here anyway. So people will be locked up in their homes anyway, so it won't matter too much for the winter.
Okay. Right now you can present the presentation.
Awesome. I'll just share my screen with you folks. Okay. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Clear, sir.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for getting up nice and early to attend this presentation. I'm probably going to go for about 35 minutes, so just under the 40 allocated, but that's good because it seems that we've run over a little bit early. As I said, it's around 9 p.m. here on Friday night here in Canada, and I'm really excited to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, and I'm sure it's something that all of you here are interested in, and that's protein nutrition and muscle hypertrophy. Skeletal muscle is absolutely critical for athletes of all sports. So whether you're a bodybuilder looking to maximize the amount of skeletal muscle through muscle hypertrophy, or you're an elite endurance athlete looking to maintain the muscle mass through a prolonged cycling event, protein is the essential macronutrient for skeletal muscle. And optimizing the amount or function of skeletal muscle can significantly affect athletic performance or even your healthy aging trajectory. So we all know that protein serves several critical purposes within the body. First, it provides the building blocks for skeletal muscle, bone, connective tissue growth and remodeling in response to exercise training. It also provides the essential substrates to repair or replace damaged or dysfunctional muscle proteins. It plays an important role in maintaining the function of many metabolic pathways and immune function. And unlike fat, which can be stored in adipose tissue, and carbohydrate, which can be stored in muscle and liver glycogen, we really have no bodily store for excess protein, which that means we must consume adequate protein daily to meet our bodily demands. Now, given that I'm a little bit of a self-proclaimed meathead, the focus for this presentation is going to be skeletal muscle and the role that protein ingestion plays in muscle protein synthesis and subsequently muscle hypertrophy. As I'm sure many of you watching this now are exercise scientists, personal trainers, sports nutritionists, I know that you're going to want to understand just how to use dietary protein to get the most out of it for your athletes to support their training and their recovery. With that in mind, there are three things that I'd like to cover in this presentation. First, I'm going to introduce the concept of muscle protein turnover and why that's important for athletes. Next, I'm going to highlight how exercise and protein nutrition influence skeletal muscle adaptation. And finally, I'll discuss how protein in the diet can be manipulated to maximize outcomes for skeletal muscle hypertrophy. And of course, I'll wrap up with what at least I consider an optimal strategy to get the most out of your protein nutrition for your athletes. Now, here you can see a really simplified figure that depicts the physiological processes that occur for skeletal muscle to adapt to an exercise stimulus. So first, the application of an exercise stimulus, such as muscular contraction from resistance exercise. This induces a perturbation in the system, for example, mechanical stretch or an alteration to cellular energy status. Now, this is sensed by mechanotransduction proteins and various energy sensing signaling proteins, such as AMPK. And this triggers a complex cascade of protein signaling events, but ultimately it leads to an upregulation of many molecular processes, particularly translational efficiency and capacity. And ultimately, this is the process that leads to an increase in most muscle protein turnover. Muscle protein turnover broadly describes the process of continuously synthesizing or building up and breaking down the proteins within the muscle. Now, throughout the remainder of this presentation, I may flick between using MPS and MPB, or muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. So it's not intentional, just perhaps keep an eye out for that. Following the ingestion of protein as food, we know it undergoes digestion into smaller peptides and amino acids, which are then subsequently absorbed and circulated throughout the body. When amino acids arrive at the muscle, they're sensed by the muscle and they can be directly incorporated into the muscle proteins through the process known as muscle protein synthesis. Also, free amino acids that reside in the intramuscular pool can be utilized for muscle protein synthesis. However, on the flip side of this, skeletal muscle also undergoes protein breakdown, where amino acids are broken down and removed from muscle protein, entering the intramuscular amino acid pool. But the muscle is particularly efficient at reusing these amino acids to resynthesize muscle proteins. And finally, proteins can be broken down and lost from skeletal muscle. And if this continues over time, this is what leads to muscles getting smaller. Many of you may have seen this really simplified schematic of muscle protein turnover before, but if you haven't, I'll give you a brief explanation of it. The y-axis shows the relative rates of muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown, the green lines being MPS and the red line being the muscle protein breakdown. Here you can see that in response to a protein-containing meal, muscle protein synthesis is transiently increased and muscle protein breakdown is suppressed. Now, this pattern occurs repeatedly throughout the day in response to each feeding occasion. However, when you expose someone to a bout of exercise, particularly resistance exercise, but this also happens with endurance exercise too, then you achieve a much greater stimulation of muscle protein synthesis in the fed state, and muscle protein synthesis declines less in the fasted state. So I guess in other words, you could say exercise sensitizes skeletal muscle to protein nutrition, And ultimately, it's the balance between these two processes that dictates whether you gain or lose muscle over time. This is a slightly easier way to digest the information on the previous slide. Here in the left-hand figure, you can see muscle protein synthesis in the white bars and muscle protein breakdown in the maroon bars. In the right-hand figure, the bars reflect net balance. So above the horizontal line is a positive net balance or muscle gain, whereas below the line reflects a negative net protein balance and muscle loss. So at rest in the post-absorptive state, in the bars you can see there, you can see that muscle protein breakdown exceeds that of muscle protein synthesis, and therefore net protein balance is negative. However, when you provide amino acids in a non-exercise state, muscle protein synthesis goes up and muscle protein breakdown is suppressed a little. And this leads to a positive net protein balance. As you can see, these first two net balance bars reflect the daily periods of feeding and fasting that you see, and they pretty much balance each other out. So in a non-exercising individual, muscle mass remains relatively constant, at least until you get much older, but that's a totally different presentation that I don't have time to get into now. With resistance exercise performed in the absence of amino acid provision, both muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown increase. However, muscle protein breakdown still exceeds MPS and the net balance remains negative, albeit a little less so. But when resistance exercise and amino acids are combined, they act synergistically, and you can clearly see a robust increase in muscle protein synthesis and a suppression of muscle protein breakdown. So the net balance then is the most positive. So I guess now we know that exercise and protein or amino acid provision are required to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis and create this period of positive net protein balance that ultimately underpins skeletal muscle adaptation or muscle hypertrophy. Now, here's a nice, really simplified explanation of how muscle hypertrophy works. The extrinsic variables here, you can see, these are the things that you can modify. So for example, your dietary influence is exogenous supplements and some resistance training variables such as load, rest interval, and things like that. Now, the intrinsic variables are the things that you can't really change, or those that are perhaps genetically determined. For example, protein turnover, sex hormones, or satellite cells. These are things that are kind of intrinsic to us. Now, the extrinsic variables work or act through to influence the intrinsic ones, and eventually they modify the output, which in this case is muscle hypertrophy. So throughout the remainder of this presentation, I hope to give you an understanding of sort of how manipulating several of these protein feeding variables can influence the subsequent muscle building response. And then in the discussion period at the end of the session, I'm also happy to answer questions about supplements as well and the role that they can play in this adaptive process. So I guess this begs several important protein related questions that people, in particular coaches, nutritionists, and practitioners like yourselves, should consider when you're trying to modify or alter protein intake to perhaps maximize muscle hypertrophy. Now, I've included some of the most popular ones that I often get asked, but there are plenty more, and I'm happy to dive into those into the question period. But for now, one of the most popular ones, and it may be an obvious question, but the question is, how much protein should an athlete be consuming sort of per serving or per meal? And this is one that frequently arises when discussing protein intake for athletes. So some seminal work in 2009 by Dr. Dan Moore, who is a former PhD student of my now boss, Dr. Stuart Phillips, had subjects perform resistance exercise. And following the bout of resistance exercise, they consumed a graded dose of high quality egg protein, either 0, 5, 10, 20 or 40 grams of protein following the exercise bout. Now, to orientate you to the figure, the y-axis in this case indicates the muscle fractional synthetic rate, which put simply is basically reflective of the rate at which you build muscle in response to the exercise and the protein ingestion. Now, to do this, we use some complex and innovative analytical tools, but I won't go into those. For now, you need to know that that's the rate of muscle building in the post-exercise period. And this FSR will appear on a number of the subsequent slides, so just keep that in mind. Of course, the x-axis has the graded doses of protein, and as you can see, muscle protein synthesis increases in a dose-responsive manner up to 20 grams of protein. And doubling the amount of protein to 40 grams pretty much led to no further benefit or no further increase in muscle protein synthesis. So therefore, 20 grams of protein, which is equivalent to about 0.25 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass, is sufficient to maximally stimulate this muscle protein synthetic response. Now, on the right-hand side here, you can see some similar work from Dr. Ollie Wittard, and they essentially replicated these findings with rested protein synthesis in the clear bars and the exercise rates in the black bars. Dr. Ollie Wittard again showed that muscle protein synthesis is increased in a dose-responsive manner up to 20 grams of protein, and again, doubling the amount of protein to 40 grams seems to confer no additional benefit for these individuals. Following this, there was a retrospective analysis of several of these studies. So those were just 2 studies, but Danmore also compiled performed a biphasic regression analysis on several of these muscle protein building studies, and with FSR on the y-axis, but this time protein intake relative to body mass along the x-axis. You can clearly see that at the line's breakpoint, which is the point at which increasing protein intake no longer leads to an increased FSR, that protein intake is maximally stimulated with a rather modest dose of 0.24 grams per kilogram of body mass per serving. Now, you can quite clearly see that there's dots all over this graph and it's pretty variable. So the upper confidence interval, or with the numbers which we can be sure of, up to 95%, is sort of 0.3 grams per kilogram of body mass. So the recommended dose of protein to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis or muscle building following resistance exercise is 0.3 grams per kilogram of body mass, which is of course very easy to calculate. So for me, as a bit of a larger man, I'm about 100 kilograms in body mass. So I just multiply that by 0.3 and my protein serving per meal or per feeding dose would be 30 grams. And that should maximize my muscle building response. So now we know how much protein to give an athlete per serving, but what about their protein intake over the course of the day? Should they perhaps consume, how much protein should an athlete consume each day in order to maximize those muscular adaptations with training over time? I'm sure many of you might be familiar with this hierarchy of evidence, but no matter if not, effectively it's a system used in evidence-based medicine to determine the strength of scientific evidence. And as you can see, systematic reviews, meta-analyses sit proudly atop this pile. Rob Morton, a former PhD student of Dr. Stuart Phillips, led a systematic review as part of his PhD to determine the effect of protein intake on gains in muscle mass and strength with resistance training. Now, this meta-analysis included 49 studies and nearly 1,900 participants. And with fat-free mass, a proxy for muscle mass on the y-axis, and protein intake relative to body mass on the x-axis, he quite clearly showed that a protein intake beyond 1.6 grams per kilogram of body mass each day led to no further increases in fat-free mass. Therefore, those athletes seeking to maintain or seeking to maximize muscle mass with their training should seek to increase or seek to consume 1.6 to sort of 2.2 for that upper confidence interval of protein per kilogram of body mass per day. And consuming more than that is likely going to have no benefit for building muscle. So now you know how much protein an athlete needs to maximize this muscle building response acutely following exercise, and how much they should consume throughout the day to maximize gains over time. But perhaps does when an athlete consumes their protein have a significant impact on their muscle protein synthesis or muscle gain over time? Well, here is some early work, or in the early 2000s, from Blake Rasmussen's group, and again with muscle protein synthesis on the x-axis, and the hours post-exercise on the y-axis, and the hours post-exercise on the x-axis. When consuming an amino acid beverage at 1 hour post-exercise, in the figure you see there, there's a rapid rise in muscle building at this 1 to 2 hour post-exercise time point. However, in the same study, if the consumption of this amino acid containing beverage was delayed to just 3 hours post-exercise, you effectively see the same increase, but it just occurs a little later, which to me suggests that the timing of the protein ingestion may not be critical to maximizing muscle protein synthesis. Now, since then, a huge number of studies have investigated the impact of protein timing on muscle mass and strength gains. Brad Schoenfeld performed a systematic review and meta-analyses to determine precisely that, the effect of protein timing on hypertrophy. Now, on the right-hand side of this vertical dash line in the figure, that favors protein consumption in closer proximity to exercise. And on the left-hand side, it favors protein consumption much further from exercise completion. Overwhelmingly, you can see, indicated by the marker labeled overall at the bottom of this figure, protein timing has little, if any, effect on skeletal muscle hypertrophy. And that's because exercise sensitizes skeletal muscle to protein provision. And this is an effect that seems to last for 24 or maybe even 48 hours following the exercise bout, which is good news for those of you that it doesn't mean that if you forget to guzzle your protein shake in the changing rooms following your training session, you're not going to miss out on all those muscle gains, because this anabolic window of opportunity remains open for an extended period of time. So does that mean an athlete should consume all of their protein at once? Or does spacing out their protein throughout the day have any benefits for athletes? Now, a typical eating pattern for many people might look something like this. A little bit of protein consumed with breakfast, a little bit of protein consumed with their lunch meal, and then most of their protein is consumed with their evening or dinner meal. And perhaps if you're anything like me, then you get a little snackish before bed and a little bedtime snack that might contain a little bit of protein. But to get a handle on whether distributing your protein intake in an even manner or sort of a skewed one, like you can see here, has been a really important question for protein researchers like myself. And here you can see a really cool study design by Dr. Jose Harita, in which they provided participants with 3 different protein ingestion patterns. And they assessed this muscle building response over a full day, 12-hour period. Now, following the bout of resistance exercise, they provided participants with either 40 grams of protein ingested twice, 6 hours apart in the top of the figure, 20 grams of protein ingested 4 times, 3 hours apart, or 10 grams of protein ingested 8 times every 90 minutes. And as you can see quite clearly in this middle figure here, the intermediate or moderate group had a significantly greater daily muscle protein synthetic response throughout the course of that day, which suggests that a moderate dose of protein should be consumed at evenly spaced intervals throughout the day to maximize this sort of cumulative muscle building response. Now, there are also some proponents of pre-sleep protein ingestion. Now, sleep, as you can see in this figure here, in the big red space of the top figure, provides a huge window of opportunity where feeding isn't really possible, and disrupting sleep to wake up and consume food might not be the best approach, because we know that sleep deprivation has negative consequences for muscle hypertrophy. So some individuals actually recommend, as part of your evenly distributed protein intake, that you consume a slowly digesting protein, such as milk, specifically casein, to increase the muscle building response in this overnight period. But what source of protein is the best type to consume for muscle building, an increasingly popular topic in sports nutrition for many reasons, but is that not all proteins are created equally so. So does the source of protein matter in terms of muscle hypertrophy? I'm sure many of you heard the meat versus plant-based protein debates, and that's a really popular topic in sports nutrition at the moment. So here you can see the essential amino acid content as a percentage of their total from a variety of protein sources, with the plant-based protein sources in the open bars and the animal-based protein sources in the dotted bars on the right-hand side. Now, essential amino acids are those that can't be synthesized in sufficient quantities endogenously, and you must obtain them from the diet. So if you take whey protein, for example, you can see it has an exceptionally high essential amino acid content, and these are the driving force behind the stimulation of muscle protein synthesis, which makes it clear why whey protein is substantially better than many other sources at increasing and promoting gains in muscle mass over time. Furthermore, when you consider the leucine content of these protein sources, animal protein sources seem to fare much better than their plant-based counterparts, with again whey coming out on top. Therefore, on a gram for gram basis, animal-based proteins are of a higher quality than plant-based proteins. But the good news is that's not to say that animal proteins are the be-all and end-all. And there's definitely a way to overcome the lower quality of plant protein that I will allude to in a few slides' time. Now, here's some of Elena Volpi's early work showing that muscle protein synthesis is entirely driven by these essential amino acids. So here you can see in the basal state on this left-hand side of this figure, muscle protein synthesis was assessed at baseline, so no feeding. And then subjects were provided with 18 grams of essential amino acids in the maroon dots, or the same essential 18 grams of essential amino acids combined with 22 grams of non-essential amino acids. And as you can see here, the increase from adding the non-essential amino acids led to no further stimulation of muscle protein synthesis, which means that essential amino acids are the ones that drive this increase in muscle protein synthesis. And some of Professor Phil Atherton's work has shown quite nicely that leucine is the primary amino acid that drives this increase in muscle protein synthesis and anabolic signaling specifically. So some of the markers of muscle protein anabolism, or the proteins in that cascade that you saw earlier in the presentation, their role is essentially to act downstream and increase the muscle building response. And you can see from these figures here that leucine is the amino acid that leads to the greatest response in those signaling markers when compared with all of the other amino acids. Leucine is also particularly capable of restoring the muscle building response of a lower dose of protein to similar to that of a maximal response that you would typically see with 25 grams of whey protein. So in this study, Tyler Churchwood-Venet, as you can see in there's 4 groups. So 6 grams of whey protein in the gray bars, 25 grams of whey protein in the black bars, 6 grams of whey protein plus 5 grams of leucine in the clear bars, and 6 grams of whey plus 5 grams of branched chain amino acids in those hatch bars. Now, at the 1.5 hour time point, post-exercise, all protein conditions seem to be essentially the same, and they stimulate muscle protein synthesis to the same extent. However, only the 25 grams of whey protein and the 6 grams of whey protein supplemented with additional leucine are able to further increase that response much later into the post-exercise period. Therefore, essential amino acids, and in particular leucine, are critical for stimulating and subsequently maximizing this muscle building response. Okay, some good news for those of you that choose not to eat animal protein for one reason or another. Now here you can see some work from Dr. Ben Wall's lab with milk protein in the white bars and mycoprotein, which is a fungi-derived protein source, in the black bars. And here they show that muscle protein synthesis is increased to the same extent at rest and following exercise in both protein conditions. Now, it's important to note that the participants in the milk group consumed 31 grams of milk protein, which contained 26 grams of total protein and 2.5 grams of leucine. But those in the mycoprotein group had to consume almost double the amount of protein to ensure that leucine was similar between the two groups. So essentially, plant-based protein can be just as effective as animal-based protein as long as you just consume more of it. And here's the chronic data for muscle growth over time. A 12-week study, resistance training with 38 men, 19 of which consumed a vegan diet and 19 consumed an omnivorous diet. And they ate 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass per day, in line with those that would maximize growth over time. And you can see that they gained in the pre to post and then the delta change in that figure on the right-hand side. You can see that they gained essentially the same amount of lean mass, muscle size, and I could show you the fiber size data too, but it essentially shows the same thing, that protein source isn't the be all and end all as long as you're consuming sufficient amounts of it. Finally, and I'm yet to give a talk and not be asked about branched chain amino acids. So they're something that have received significant attention in the sports nutrition world. And branched chain amino acids specifically include leucine, isoleucine, and valine, and they're frequently branded for optimizing gains in muscle mass. Now, here you can see some of Dr. Sarah Jackman's early work showing that they're capable of stimulating muscle protein synthesis when you compare them to a non-protein containing placebo beverage. However, some more recent work from Cas Fuchs in the Netherlands quite nicely showed that when they compared milk, branched chain amino acids, and branched chain keto acids, the stimulation of muscle protein synthesis in the early phase quickly returns to baseline when you consume branched chain amino acids or branched chain keto acids. And you essentially need the full complement of amino acids seen here in the milk group, as they're required to maintain MPS above baseline for a much more prolonged period of time. Now, I've just bombarded you with information about protein intake and how to maximize this, but I guess you're thinking, as a coach, an athlete, a nutritionist, you must be wondering, how on earth do you piece this all together? What does it all mean? How can I use this to make my athlete's muscles grow bigger? Well, that's what I'm here for. And first of all, I think it's absolutely critical to remember that for muscle hypertrophy, exercise is king and nutrition is queen. So the gray portion of these bars here show that the benefit of resistance exercise training on strength, and then on the left-hand side, and on fat-free mass gains on the right-hand side. Whereas the white area at the top of these bars show the small additional benefit to be gained from consuming protein intake in line with the slides that you've just seen. So specifically, you see a 9% improvement in strength, which is notable, but not huge. And then a 27% improvement in fat-free mass gains, which again, certainly worth pursuing, but I think resistance exercise training is the important piece of the puzzle. So, which absolutely makes it a worthwhile pursuit. However, getting the foundations in check where you'll get the most bang for your buck. With those foundations in mind, you can see this is a really easy way to think about the path to muscle growth. And once you're performing exercise training with a high degree of effort and sufficient volume, you can kind of start to focus in on the smaller details, your nutrition being one of them. Now, first, ensuring that you're eating enough calories. It's much easier to grow muscle because it's an energetically expensive process when in a caloric surplus. Then modifying your macronutrient composition of your diet with a specific interest on getting sufficient protein. Then as you get higher and higher up this pyramid and everything else is consistent, you can start to change the finer details such as protein timing and the cherry on the top of the cake, I guess, which is a really small, but what is predominantly for the 1% of the population. These are some of the well-researched supplements, for example, creatine and things like that. But I'm going to wrap up with what I consider my optimal strategy for how to manipulate your protein intake and maximize your muscle growth, summarizing from the previous slides. So these are the 5 very easy guidelines to get the most out of your protein nutrition for your athletes. Make sure that you're consuming 0.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass for each feeding or per serving. Consume approximately twice the recommended daily amount, maybe a little bit higher, but protein intakes beyond 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body mass per day will likely confer no additional benefit. Timing around exercise seems to have little to no influence on the adaptation of muscle and appears to be pretty trivial. But equally, spacing your protein-containing meals throughout the day may be beneficial. And emphasizing those proteins with a full complement of essential amino acids, particularly those higher in leucine, or if not, and you tend to consume lower quality proteins, you can make up for it by consuming more. Now, these are the take-home points from the entire presentation. Muscle mass is regulated by these 2 processes, muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. Protein feeding stimulates muscle protein synthesis in a dose-dependent manner up to a point. And protein feeding can be manipulated to maximize muscle protein synthesis. Essential amino acids, and particular leucine, are critical for muscle protein synthesis. And as I alluded to in my final few slides, exercise is king and nutrition is, particularly protein nutrition, is queen. And with that, I'd like to wrap up and say thanks very much for listening and good morning.
Okay, thank you, James, for the great presentation. Me, myself, actually have really so many questions right now, and some of our attendee is asking some interesting questions too, but we have to deal, we're going to have our Q&A discussions later after our second speaker is up. Is that okay with you, James?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually have to move offices now, but I'm going to come back. What time is the Q&A session for me? And I'm just going to log off and log back on for a moment.
Okay, the Q&A session will be 40 minutes from now.
40 minutes from now?
Yes, 40 minutes. Is that okay with you?
That's absolutely perfect. Yeah, no problem. I'm just going to shift offices. I'll be back in a second.
Okay, we'll be seeing you very soon, okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very meaningful and fruitful. Right now we're going to you can log off now. Thank you. Oke, semuanya tadi udah mendengarkan materi pertama kita dari James McHenry dari McMaster University, Kanada. Nanti untuk sesi diskusi akan dilakukan langsung setelah pemateri kedua kita maju. Nah, ini kayaknya pertanyaannya masih sedikit nih di room chat. Bisa loh ditanya-tanya sekarang karena nanti Mr. James-nya bakal balik lagi 40 menit dari sekarang gitu. Oke. Nah, sekarang udah saatnya materi kedua. Semuanya udah siap belum nih dengerin materi kedua? Karena Bapak Ibu, kakak-kakak sekalian, pemateri kedua ini kayaknya satu Indonesia udah kenal deh sama orangnya. Oke, kayaknya udah masuk nih sepertinya. Halo Mas Aderai, selamat pagi.
Halo, selamat pagi Mbak.
Selamat pagi, halo Mas. Selamat datang di SymposiFest Gizi dan Kebugaran Indonesia. Di sini udah banyak banget akademisi, binaragawan juga, atlet-atlet mungkin yang join hari ini untuk tentunya menggali ilmu lebih dalam terkait gizi dan kebugaran. Nah, mungkin sedikit perkenalan tentang Mas Aderai, walaupun sebenarnya sudah tidak perlu diperkenalkan ya. Beliau merupakan binaragawan Indonesia yang pastinya mempunyai yang memiliki prestasi-prestasi nasional maupun internasional. Dan sekarang beliau memiliki sebuah instansi ya, Rai Institute, mengkonsentrasikan upaya edukasi melalui program pelatihan sertifikasi untuk para profesional di bidang fitness. Nah, ini tentunya berguna banget nih buat yang ingin berbisnis di gym, kesehatan, dan kebugaran. Oke, gimana
Ya.
kabarnya Mas Aderai? Sehat?
Ya, baik. Terima kasih, Mbak. Syukur masih diberikan kemandirian akan sehat.
Oke, alhamdulillah. Untuk Rai Institutnya sendiri, boleh diceritakan nggak nih, Mas? Gimana awal mula perjalanannya, mungkin dari switching dari binaragawan ke sekarang kan lebih ke edukator, di Instagram juga suka sharing-sharing gitu.
Iya, jadi memang pertama-tama saya memberikan apresiasi yang setinggi-tingginya ya kepada teman-teman mengadakan yang namanya SymposiFest ini ya. Jadi satu hal yang sangat luar biasa, yang sangat baik ya. Ini juga mungkin salah satu hikmah daripada di musim infeksi ini. Begitu banyak kesempatan bagi kita untuk bisa berbagi dan juga belajar. Mungkin itu juga alasan kenapa waktu dulu juga saya membuat institusi pendidikan. Di sana saya dibantu dengan teman-teman dari ahli dan bidangnya masing-masing. Saya mencoba hanya sedikit mungkin ya memberikan sumbangsi atau mungkin kontribusi sedikit gitu ya, karena saya yakin semua orang sebenarnya bisa belajar dari mana saja. Tapi memang saya berpikir yang namanya edukasi itu adalah sebenarnya yang menjadi kekurangan utama gitu ya dalam upaya kita kalau kita berbicara esensinya ingin menyehatkan masyarakat begitu ya. Apalagi kalau teman-teman di Gizi Kebugaran ya, kalau kita lihat kembali lagi ada istilah yang mengatakan mulut kita sumber kesehatan dan sumber kesakitan. Tubuh kita adalah akumulasi daripada apa yang kita masukkan ke dalam mulut kita. Gerak makan kita itu menjadi salah satu yang berkontribusi besar gitu ya dalam mempertahankan, memelihara atau bahkan mengoptimalkan kesehatan kita. Nah, jadi edukasi itu menjadi sesuatu yang penting. Itu mungkin alasan kenapa saya mengadakan Sira Institute tersebut gitu. Jadi ada satu istilah yang mengatakan pemahaman itu adalah sebuah fondasi daripada sebuah kepatuhan. Nah, jadi kita disuruh patuh untuk mengatur pola makan, disuruh patuh untuk berolahraga, disuruh patuh untuk memahami disuruh patuh untuk menjalankan regimen atau rutinitas kebugaran gitu ya atau kesehatan itu. Kalau tidak ada sebuah pemahaman, hal itu kadang-kadang akhirnya menjadi sebuah keterpaksaan. Nah, ada istilah yang mengatakan bahwa kalau berbicara terpaksa itu kan berbicara perlawanan. Nah, makanya kenapa saya membuat definisi itu berdasarkan lebih kepada kecerdasan tubuh kita sendiri, yaitu adalah sehat bersahabat dengan pertemanan hati, sakit bersahabat dengan perlawanan hati. Nah, ketika membuat sebuah perlawanan gitu kepada diri kita itu mengharapkan hasil yang kita inginkan itu biasanya sulit terjadi. Makanya kenapa 95% berdasarkan statistik orang yang berdiet itu selalu gagal gitu ya. Karena ada nuansa keterpaksaan di sana, ada nuansa perlawanan dan pemahamannya adalah sacrificing gitu ya atau yang namanya berkorban gitu demi untuk sehat seolah-olah. Makanya kenapa saya katakan tadi adalah sebuah unik ketika di dalam satu kalimat yang sama tapi ada sesuatu yang paradoks, yaitu artinya perlawanan terhadap kesehatan gitu. Jadi kalau istilahnya memerangi kesehatan seperti yang terjadi hari ini ya di musim infeksi ini, atau mungkin istilah lain itu namanya kayak memerangi kedamaian. Nah, sedangkan damai itu kan maksudnya nggak perang gitu, tapi dengan memerangi sesuatu untuk damai, makanya kenapa damai nggak akan pernah muncul gitu. Nah, jadi kita tidak memungkinkan yang namanya kesehatan itu hadir kalau seandainya kita memaksakan diri kita, dan itu memang sudah yang terjadi gitu ya, dan hampir sebagian besar profil daripada kesakitan penyakit itu murni memang disebabkan 95% karena ulah perilaku kita. Terlepas daripada hari ini yang sedang tren hari ini yaitu adalah musim infeksi gitu ya, padahal infeksi kontribusinya sebenarnya sangat kecil. Di sisi lain juga infeksi membutuhkan ulah perilaku manusianya, makanya kenapa 95% tingkat fatalitas atau tingkat keberbahayaan sebuah penyakit infeksi itu pasti selalu ada korelasinya gitu. Makanya kenapa kalau berbicara direct causation itu hampir bisa dibilang jarang gitu ya. Selalu pasti ada korelasinya gitu ya. Atau bahkan ternyata hanya asosiasinya saja terhadap penyakit infeksi yang menjadi kreditnya gitu. Tapi kembali lagi semua ulah perilaku kita. Nah, dalam ulah perilaku kita itu ada yang namanya aktivitas gerak tadi ya, dalam hal gerak tubuh, mungkin gerak pikiran dan juga gerak nafas. Nah, selain itu juga mungkin kalau di gizi kebugaran itu ya itu adalah gerak makan gitu. Nah, jadi memang kalau makan itu kita ajarkan mereka hal yang sederhana. Saya membuat satu penyederhanaan dalam definisi pilihan makanan, 1 sumber, 2 penyajian, 3 jadwal, dan 4 jumlah. Itu kelihatannya mudah saja, tapi bagi orang untuk memasukkan makanan ke dalam mulutnya harus dengan seleksi 4 instrumen tersebut, itu selalu lupa gitu. Nah, makanya kenapa muncullah berbagai strategi-strategi. Makanya pendekatan-pendekatan diet itu tujuannya menjadi sebuah tools atau sebagai perangkat atau sebagai metode. Esensinya tetap kembali lagi adalah sehat. Nah, cuma memang sering terjadi hari ini adalah kita terperangkap di dalam sebuah metode, tapi lupa memahami esensinya gitu. Jadi akhirnya pendekatan diet dijadikan sebagai partai politik ya sama teman-teman. Seolah-olah pendekatan yang lain adalah salah. Tapi justru satu hal yang saya syukuri dari dunia kesehatan itu sesungguhnya yaitu adalah bahwa kita itu punya sebuah keikhlasan akan perbedaan gitu. Makanya kenapa di sana toleransinya gede. Makanya tadi salah satu pembicaranya tadi siapa namanya, James ya.
James McCree.
Iya, James ya, iya. Jadi James tadi juga ceritakannya betapa memang kalau bicara soal yang namanya kesehatan itu, kalau yang namanya perbedaan pendapat itu gitu, itu tuh besar sekali gitu, dan itu menjadi sesuatu yang justru memperkaya pemahaman atau pengetahuan kita ya. Jadi ada orang yang bilang misalnya kalau bisa low carbs, yang satu bilang kalau bisa high carbs. Yang satu maunya kalau bisa plant based diet, yang satu maunya carnivore diet gitu ya. Yang satu lagi maunya puasa, yang satu lagi maunya calorie restriction dan sebagainya. Jadi tidak ada yang benar, tidak ada yang salah. Nah, makanya kenapa pendekatan daripada nutrisi sendiri juga sama juga sebenarnya dengan pendekatan medis itu sendiri. It's not one size fits all, tapi it's a precision and personalized gitu. Nah, makanya kenapa disitulah pentingnya kita untuk bisa melihat, karena masing-masing manusia, tubuh itu memiliki keunikan sendiri gitu. Makanya kenapa dia memiliki ekspresi gitu atau respon yang berbeda-beda gitu. Bagi sebagian orang ternyata pendekatan diet seperti ini yang lebih baik, bagi sebagian yang lain ternyata lebih menyenangkan yang seperti apa gitu. Nah, tapi tentunya bukan dalam arti menyenangkan seenak sendiri gitu ya, tapi dalam arti maksudnya bahwa semua pendekatan baik adanya, nah kita bisa sesuaikan dengan kondisi situasi kita masing-masing gitu ya. Apakah latar belakang dalam hal fisikalitas kita maupun latar belakang dalam hal aktivitas kita gitu.
Oke, berarti Ra Institute nih sangat komprehensif dan benar-benar bukan cuma sekedar gym gitu ya Mas Ade ya.
Oh, kalau Ra Institute itu
edukasi.
nggak ada hubungannya sama gym. Ra Institute itu pendidikan kursus fitness sih dia.
Oh, jadi lebih ke pendidikan kursus dan fitness.
Ya, ya maksudnya kayak kursus aja, kayak kursus bahasa gitu. Nah, ini ada kursus, kalau kita bilangnya jadi kursus fitness gitu, maksudnya biar orang paham. Jadi lebih kepada, dan itu juga mirip kayak universitas terbuka gitu. Jadi orang belajar, membeli paketnya, nah nanti ada workshopnya 1-2 hari, mereka bertemu sama para pengajar, dan habis itu melakukan tes gitu. Sebenarnya sesederhana itu. Yang nggak sederhana belajarnya dan memahaminya serta mengaplikasikannya. Kalau dalam hal itunya mungkin sederhana. Dan mungkin saya berharap nanti di kemudian hari semakin banyak lagi institusi pendidikan lainnya gitu ya. Karena memang yang jadi tantangan memang hari ini. Ya mungkin kalau anak-anak muda di Indonesia hari ini mungkin sudah punya kemampuan berbahasa Inggris yang baik ya. Jadi bisa mengikuti dengan baik gitu. Tapi mungkin alasan saya waktu dulu pertama kali saya punya institusi pendidikan Ra Institute di tahun mungkin hampir 15 tahun yang lalu ya, kita itu lebih kepada memang terjadinya yang namanya apa ya kalau istilahnya missing link gitu. Jadi terjadi yang namanya kalau istilahnya apa ya, lost in translation gitu. Jadi materinya udah sangat baik sekali, kadang-kadang juga banyak sertifikasi dari luar negeri yang hadir datang ke Indonesia gitu, tapi ketika sampai ke para trainernya gitu ya, pada teman-teman yang belajar ternyata banyak loss in translation di sana karena memang kita tidak menggunakan bahasa Inggris sebagai bahasa pertama kita gitu ya, dan kebanyakan dari para trainer pada saat itu juga mungkin tidak terlalu memberikan perhatian pada kemampuan dalam berbahasa Inggris, sehingga jadi akhirnya waktu belajar kadang-kadang ada satu dan lain hal yang jadinya akhirnya kurang gitu. Makanya kenapa dengan institusi pendidikan berbahasa Indonesia diharapkan paling tidak bisa memberikan pemahaman yang lebih baik begitu.
Oh, oke. Berarti untuk Rai Institute ini lebih ke mencetak para nanti ke depannya fitness coach, instruktur, dan edukator ya Mas ya?
Ya, harapannya seperti itu sih. Sebenarnya juga buat fitness mania atau orang awam juga, ibu rumah tangga yang ingin mau belajar tentang itu juga banyak gitu. Jadi ada yang student mahasiswa yang memang senang belajar, ada yang memang fitness mania, anak-anak fitness aja gitu. Atau mungkin kayak Mbak, saya mau tahu aja karena kebetulan juga ada di universitas yang berhubungan dengan gizi dan sebagainya. Mungkin, saya mau belajar. Atau bahkan mungkin juga di teman-teman dari dunia medis ya, kedokteran dan sebagainya yang mungkin mau ikutan juga belajar di tempat kami. Jadi saya rasa itu yang memang kami lakukan gitu ya. Kita ada beberapa para pengajar juga dari berbagai latar belakang dan ekspertisnya masing-masing gitu. Kita berharap nanti pengajarnya ke depan makin hari juga makin banyak, dan kita juga mungkin dengan situasi hari ini gitu yang mungkin terjadinya perubahan perilaku masyarakat sekarang maunya udah mulai online dan sebagainya, jadi berarti mungkin nanti akan ada tahap-tahap selanjutnya gitu. Tapi memang Rai Institute sebenarnya kalau boleh jujur itu sebenarnya memang lebih kepada basic dasar, tapi di sisi lain dalam mempelajari basic dasar itu memang membutuhkan sebuah pemahaman juga. Karena kalau memang terlalu pemula sekali juga mungkin nanti akan kesulitan untuk mengikutinya gitu. Jadi mungkin lebih kepada kayak mungkin masuk ke universitas gitu loh. Iya, kira-kira itu.
Oh, oke Mas Ade. Ini Rai Institute kayaknya keren banget. Boleh mungkin diberikan sedikit-sedikit tips atau bocoran-bocoran materi kalau di Rai Institute itu bagaimana terlebih lagi dalam mungkin di sini kan banyak ibu bapak dari bidang fitness dan mungkin ingin membuka bisnis di bidang gizi dan kebugaran juga untuk Indonesia. Itu ada nggak sih bocoran-bocoran sedikit gimana biar kita bisa mengambil langkah awal yang tepat? Seperti Mas Adi dengan Rai Institute-nya kan berarti lebih ke pencetaknya nih. Nah, ini di sini sudah ada beberapa orang akademisi yang ingin membuka juga sebuah bisnis gizi dan kebugaran.
Ya mungkin kalau saya rasa mungkin kita nggak perlu terlalu harus, karena itu kan juga kan sebenarnya kan kolaborasi dari berbagai trainer sih sebenarnya ya. Jadi kayak ada teman-teman saya dari latar belakang kedokteran, dari latar belakang exercise, dari latar belakang mungkin kulineri gitu ya dan sebagainya. Nah kalau kita sekarang ini sebenarnya satu hal yang kita syukuri ya, sekarang ini kan sosial media ya kita miliki ya. Jadi istilahnya everybody have their own TV show gitu ya. Nah jadi ada istilah yang mengatakan kita tidak bisa memberi kalau tidak memiliki. Jadi nomor satu kalau menurut saya adalah justru teman-teman coba untuk belajar yang lebih banyak buat dirinya, ke satu. Kedua, mengaplikasikan pembelajaran pada dirinya. Jadi membayangkan tubuhnya itu adalah di satu sisi menyenangkan ya, kita memakai jurnal, memakai referensi dan sebagainya ya. Tapi teman-teman juga mesti paham gitu ya, bahwa kadang-kadang jurnal dan referensi itu bisa datang dari berbagai angle gitu ya. Karena tergantung yang membiayainya juga, maka nanti jurnalnya juga akan disesuaikan dengan kepentingan daripada produk yang misalnya ingin diharapkan untuk mendapatkan satu pendapat yang baik tentang hal tersebut gitu. Nah, jadi teman-teman juga mesti hati-hati dalam hal tersebut. Tapi selain kita belajar dari jurnal dan referensi, menurut saya yang paling penting itu adalah justru belajar dari diri sendiri. Makanya kenapa saya selalu katakan pengetahuan adalah sebuah kekuatan, tapi pengetahuan yang diaplikasikan pada diri sendiri itu adalah sebenarnya kekuatan yang sesungguhnya gitu. Nah, jadi kalau kita bilang kita walk the talk gitu, atau kita menjalankan we teach what we preach gitu ya. Jadi kita menjalankan apa yang kita ajarkan gitu. Jadi mengajarkan dengan mencontohkan, nah maka tubuh kita itu harus jadi yang namanya tempat eksperimen atau laboratorium kita sendiri. Apalagi kalau kita berbicara yang namanya makanan. Karena selama teman-teman gak mempraktekkan kepada dirinya sendiri, tapi mempraktekkan pada orang lain atau menggunakan referensi orang lain, akhirnya pada saat itulah kita hanya akan berada di dalam yang namanya kalau istilahnya belief restrict you, knowing empowers you. Jadi kita cuma percaya aja apa kata orang, oh katanya dia gitu, oh katanya gitu. Lalu kita merasa meyakini itu, tapi sebenarnya ada nuansa keraguan di sana karena kita sendiri nggak pernah ke sana. Oh saya percaya Bali itu indah. Oh iya saya dengar ya katanya berdasarkan referensi itu di Bali itu pantainya bagus. Oh iya saya dengar di sana udaranya bagus. Oh iya saya dengar di sana makanannya enak. Udah pernah ke Bali? Belum pernah. Jadi jadi kita mau menjadi expertnya Bali tapi kita ini belum pernah ke Bali gitu. Nah jadi teman-teman sekalian juga sama, yaitu adalah kembali lagi adalah kalau berbicara badan gitu. Nah tadi tepat sekali gitu. Di satu sisi kayak nutrisi itu menjadi sesuatu yang penting, tapi kita bisa lihat di sana ketika kita nggak kerja keras untuk mau latihan. Tadi James kan juga lihat kalau di piramida tersebut ya. Jadi di bawah tuh kelihatan sekali ternyata balik lagi teman-teman nggak latihan ya, nggak dilatih badannya dan sebagainya gitu, nggak mau meluangkan waktu untuk melakukan hal tersebut. Bahkan nutrisi sendiri nggak akan menjadi optimal. Makanya tadi exercise is the king, nutrition is the queen, atau jadi bahkan makronutrisi is the king, mikronutrisi is the queen-nya gitu, atau katalisnya gitu ya. Jadi semuanya kombinasi daripada berbagai aktivitas gerak kita sendiri. Jadi nomor satu, lakukan pada diri kita sendiri, kita belajar terus-menerus teman-teman. Banyak kesempatan hari ini. Kalau dulu orang ya ikut seminar ya, kalau Mbak tahu, saya mungkin puluhan tahun ya, saya udah di industri ini kan udah dari tahun 90-an ya, jadi berarti udah tua banget, udah 30 tahunan. Dulu kalau kadang kita ikut seminar, kita mau misalnya boleh gak bawa kamera gitu ya untuk merekam, itu kan nggak boleh gitu. Bahkan di tahun 2000-an saja gitu ya, masih juga kita ikutan seminar-seminar gitu ya, misalnya apakah di luar, apakah di dalam negeri gitu ya, yang mungkin kita lihat bagus banget, kita mau ngerekam aja nggak bisa gitu. Nah tapi yang terjadi hari ini, kita bisa menyaksikan seminar-seminar gitu. Jadi kalau dulu kelihatannya kayak bercandaan ketika Allah kamu mah belajarnya mah dari YouTube, yang benar dong belajar di sekolah kan kayak gitu ya. Tapi yang terjadi hari ini, orang yang belajar di sekolah kadang-kadang sembarangan, gurunya dosen yang ngomong apa dianya tidur, dosen yang ngapain ininya apa hanya menjalankan karena dipaksa orang tua untuk kuliah. Tapi ketika seseorang belajar dari YouTube, dia belajar dengan sesungguh-sungguhnya karena itu pilihan dia sendiri. Malah akhirnya jadi lebih pinter belajar sama YouTube daripada belajar sama dosen gitu. Nah jadi teman-teman sekalian di sini kenapa hal itu terjadi? Karena adanya satu kemajuan teknologi hari ini yang memungkinkan